Thank you. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. So, as I mentioned in my correspondence to you, I messed up last week with structuring Zoom in a way where the audio would be clear for you to hear. And it's one of those things that if you don't set it up properly, you get a mess. So we're going to do the class again and record it, and then we're going to post that on YouTube, and we'll send you a link and all that stuff. So for anybody who wants a repeat of last week, we'll have a mechanism for that to happen. Okay, so point that I made last week is that agriculture leads to a sedentary life. And what happens is the human experience changes. When I say human experience, I'm talking about going back millions of years to our ancestors and to how we lived and how we fed ourselves and how we sustained life and how we survived. Because our species, on several occasions, was on the point of being extinct. We survived because of our intelligence and our ability to reason. When we come to a sedentary lifestyle, the human experience changes. It doesn't change immediately. It takes thousands of years for us to transition from the hunter-gatherer existence to the agriculture and animal husbandry. And why it is so significant is that once we became fixed on a spot and we were no longer following the animals who instinctively brought us to food and to water, we would follow them. They would bring us there. And that's one of the keys to our survival. But once we became fixed on a spot, and nature didn't cooperate. We had a drought or a fire or whatever, and crops could not be harvested, then people were left with no food. There were some who, in the agriculture world, developed means for storing food, for keeping excess and retaining it. And when neighboring villages were out of food, they would come to get food. If that person with food said, no, I'm not going to share my food with you, that is the emergence of power right there. When you're out of food and I got food, now I have power. I have wealth, my excess food, and I have power. And so when that happens, we now become aggressive with our own species. We go from being preyed upon by animals to now we are predators of other humans. And so we get into what becomes introduced to the human experience over thousands of years after the discovery of agriculture 10,000 years ago is we become introduced to warfare. And along with warfare comes slavery. And so that now becomes a part of the human experience. The forces for greed are constantly looking to increase wealth, which increases power. And I want to look at it today as a psychological issue. Okay, let me get that out of the way there. And we should be able to see.
I had a strange dream. I was walking through a golden temple. beneath a dome of glass, and through chambers of splendor, filled with so many objects that the heart so desires. I saw miracles of human skill and artistry, and flawless beings who seemingly lacked nothing. But it appeared they were all searching for something. Such strange creatures.
The whole world is in a big mess. The more they get, the more they want.
President Bush, after 9/11, said, "I urge all Americans to go shopping."
This brain would still make me money. It's the thing in me. I grew up in a way that I would still make money even if I was left in a desert.
There is somebody who tries to say, you need this. There are enough people who think they need that. That's what the marketing strategy is that it always tells you shouldn't be content.
Humans are by nature greedy. Evolution has shown us that. As long as this mechanism doesn't become too dominant, it serves the goals of the individual perfectly.
Today, I'd go so far as to say it's a symptom of an illness.
Catastrophe is on its way. Catastrophe you and I, we cannot even imagine.
I wonder if we're a viable form of life. Maybe we're just an evolutionary flash in the pan, and we'll be sitting right next to the dinosaurs at the Cockroach Museum.
One thing I would love to say that you must always think of your death.
I kept asking myself, why are we like this? We're caring and compassionate, but we're also egocentric and reckless. We give and we hoard. We create and destroy. What is our problem? What drives us? I went in search of answers.
Humanity's at the crossroads. I think a historical moment. The physical environment is undermined to the point where we need to attend to it. War is something that we ought to think about, well, why does that happen? People are pervasively unhappy. On top of all of that, we keep building Walmarts. I see insatiable greed as inextricably connected to all of these other difficulties that if we don't recognize and come to terms with, we're literally putting our species at risk.
I get that.
You know, you might ask to talk about Darwin. Well, if you're asked to talk about Darwin, it has to be about evolution. And what's the word evolution mean? Change. So evolution is an idea that Darwin is trying to understand. And what's his strikingly original proposal? Natural selection. So humans are, on the one hand, very similar to all other forms of life in that we share a basic biological predisposition, towards survival. But on the other hand, we're so smart that we actually recognize that we exist. And the point here is that being alive and knowing it is grounds for great joy. On the other hand, it also carries a very terrible existential burden. If you know that you're here, you know that someday, like all living things, that you won't be here. If that's all we thought about, I'm gonna die, I may walk outside and get hit by a meteor, we would literally be paralyzed by abject terror. What human beings did is to construct and maintain what the anthropologists today call culture. And all cultures offer some recipe for immortality, either literally through the heavens and afterlives and reincarnations of all the world's great religions, or symbolically through the belief that some vestige of our identity will persist over time nevertheless. That's why you want to have children. That's why you want to build pyramids. That's why we want to write great books and symphonies. That's why we want to have a lot of money. Human beings are motivated to have a lot of stuff because psychologically speaking, it gives them a sense that they may be able to live forever.
Desire, greed, and the struggle that brings about anger and aggression, from the Buddhist philosophical perspective, are all resultant states of a person consistently trying to look at what is not true. We talk about three fundamental truths: that things are impermanent. Secondly, the fundamental principle of everything is said to be emptiness. But now what happens is we try to build something that makes us forget about this. We try to make things permanent. And that struggle creates the third truth of this suffering. We begin to then hang on to things. I'll give you an example. You know, if I have a shirt, and every time I go out to do some shopping, you buy another shirt. You may have 12 in your closet, but you'll buy the 13th, just so that you have a sense of you'll live long enough to wear all 13 shirts, or perhaps even more than that. So there's a sense of every day consistently doing something because of which we may be able to more solidify our sense of immortality, our sense of living continuously, not changing. And that struggle consistently builds up all these neuroses, and the prominent one of them becomes the greed.
Being successful in business is an art. And when you have it, you can be able to take things to a level that people will be surprised. How much is the square meter price? So let's not talk about the international price. Let's talk about our price. 700 square meters per floor, multiplied by 8 floors, multiplied by our local price. 1,000 what?
It's 1,000.
It's 1,000. Yeah, it will cost you 5.6 million.
Oh, 5.6 million.
Yeah, I'd rather deal with those types of figures because that's exactly what it's going to be.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Huh? I will tell you my philosophy is very simple. There is a thin line separating a businessman and a criminal. Why? Because anything I do, somebody is bound to say I've cheated him. So all of us as businessmen throughout the world, whether it's Bill Gates, it's Richard Branson, we are all viewed as criminals. But it's because we think beyond other people think. President Mugabe is my brother. From a European perspective, I would be a nephew. From an African, I'll be a brother. We cannot have a world full of critics. We want their number shrinked. So there's fewer critics, more doers. That way the world economy will be nice to live in. Welcome to my house. I want to show you around as well as the achievements I've had for so many years. And yeah, you know, at a school which is near my old offices, they gave me an award for building a school block. And then an organization, Help Us Help Ourselves, honored me for my work for humanitarian reasons. So they gave me this award. This award from BEFTA, its main focus is to recognize those who have done a lot of work in human rights, affirmative action, and empowerment issues, internationally. That's me. In here is my main lounge, wherein if you come in, and friends and family, we do meet and toss around and, you know, have conversations of sorts, political, economic, and family. Okay. The property has a helipad on top, so when it's cold here, we do put the heaters. So it really has, you know, heaters over here. And this room is called the Mugabe dining room. If I'm refurbishing this house, this is the only room I don't refurbish because it gives me that sentimental relationship with the president. And yeah, the man that money can't buy. And this is it. I know where I came from. I came from being a vegetable vendor. My bed was the floor, the granolithic floor. That's where I used to sleep, with a very poor linen blanket that goes beneath me and one on top. And that history is why I want to, you know, be able to show I gotta live well.
Talking about
Here, that's right. It must be noted that there are people of great wealth who would argue that if they cannot extract extraordinary sums of money from what they do, they will not have an incentive to do what they do.
The argument was that if you did these things, we will get rid of unemployment, there'll be more investment, there'll be more income, that will trickle down.
Hey, 5/8 for 100,000 ton water.
Without big rewards, people like me are not going to work 15 to 20 hours a day in order to get rich. Very few people have the mental resources, the energy. I mean, look at me. Here I am. I'm creating an African art collection. I'm creating companies. My youngest child is 3. I'm 70 years old. I have 4 children, 13 and below. So what does that say about me? I mean, I'm out there creating.
There are a lot of things that perpetuate.
So that kind of gives you a view of the rationalizations for stuff. Let me get to this one. What I wanted to mention before we start this is that, as we discussed in previous classes about the triangle trade, that was a system that was developed making some people extraordinarily wealthy. It goes back to the 1600s and the slave trade, and it became a system. Many would argue that this is really the birth of capitalism. We had mercantilism, war capitalism, that kind of stuff. But then we get into what is really the system of capitalism, where banks lend money for a business enterprise. That enterprise uses it to get resources and then transforms those resources into finished products that then get marketed across the globe. So all of which is, there's an investment, there's a return on the investment, and so it creates a system where those of entrepreneurial skills and who have been trained can look at a marketplace and identify resources that are going to be necessary that could become commodity resources where the market has to have it. And if you have control over it, you can make a lot of money at it because they will have to have it. I attended a conference recently about Zambia, and there was an American businessman there who was very involved in setting up business in Zambia. Well, Zambia has a lot of copper. And he said, you know, we're not here just to take their resources. We want to do it in a way where everybody benefits and all that, blah, blah, blah. But what he said is Georgia Power, as an example, will have to invest as much capital in the coming years as it has from its beginning. So you add up all the capital expenditures from its beginning, and it will have to make that amount of capital expenditure again. Why is that? It's artificial intelligence. Because the data centers for artificial intelligence require a massive amount of power. And the infrastructure for delivering that power isn't there. So they will have to rewire everything. And Zambia is going to be a source, is one of the sources of copper. So you take a thing like AI, which is getting a lot of investment now on the speculation that it will be a big moneymaker in the years ahead. And the business person is trained and skilled at understanding what are some of the basic things that they will need. And I can make investments in that and try to become the source of materials that are must-have materials. So what I'm saying is, when you look at all of that, it takes a lot of brain power, a lot of skill, and the system is there to work with it. But it's a system that does not take into account, are there any human cost? Are there, doesn't care about what the kids are eating in school, or all those other social issues that many of us are very concerned about. That's outside of the system. The system, however, must be protected at all cost.
I chose banking as my career. I'm a trained accountant, and I worked with the Julius Baer & Co. AG Bank, first in Zurich and then in the Cayman Islands, which is a tax haven. I was promoted to compliance officer, meaning I was the legal conscience of the company.
Die Berufskarriere als Banker gewählt. I'm a trained accountant and I worked with the Julius Baer & Co. AG Bank, first in Zurich and then in the Cayman Islands, which is a tax haven. I was promoted to compliance officer, meaning I was the legal conscience of the company.
A certain amount of greed is instilled into you. That was true for me too, I have to admit. You start to think only in monetary units. The dollar signs appear before your eyes and in your heart. Then they're there, and they're the only thing that matters. A lot of profit and making sure you don't get caught. That's the way I operated too, of course.
In
my function as compliance officer, I determined that we had criminal clients. There were names like Bin Laden. There was a Mexican drug boss. It became clear to me that I was working for a criminal organization and that the bank was a participant in tax evasion and fraud. I ended up feeling morally conflicted. Then took the matter up with management. We were threatened, and the entire family ended up leaving the Cayman Islands very suddenly. There have been Swiss bankers in the Cayman Islands who have been killed. To an extent, my decision to leave the system was a moral issue. But what was more important, I think, was that I realized the system had turned against me. For example, the threats that were made against me in the Cayman Islands, the way I was fired and then threatened again. The bank would destroy me if I tried to file charges against them. The bank sent private detectives after us. I was followed on my way to work. I had to change the route I took to work, change my work hours. The sight of a black car would upset me. I was completely spooked. I even considered suicide. They wanted to drive me crazy. The state prosecutors had all the information, but they did nothing with it. It's a political problem. It would make the criminal clients uneasy. They would realize they're no longer safe and protected either. So with that in mind, the authorities don't go after the bank. No, they go after the man who made the truth public. I spent 217 days in prison. The first 30 days were in 2005, and the rest in 2011. Both times I was in solitary confinement, spending 23 hours a day alone in my cell. There were prisoners who flipped out, started banging against the doors, screaming. Switzerland and basically every country, they protect their golden calves. The golden calf in Switzerland is banking secrecy. That's why no one will ever investigate the Julius Baer Bank, even though the state prosecutors know that Julius Baer had helped deceive the US tax authorities and so forth. For political reasons, the state prosecutors will never investigate any of that.
Our question was, how could we create test conditions that would approximate the behavior of a stockbroker, for example? We use functional magnetic resonance imaging to investigate brain activity in our test subjects. We can look deep into the brain, including into the structures responsible for the reward response. Our subjects play a stock trading game and have to decide whether they want to invest a large amount of money or a small amount. Then they get feedback during the game as to whether the share price is rising or falling. We've been able to determine that people who are especially greedy display a more muted response in regions responsible for punishment and loss of money. This mechanism enables a kind of disinhibition.
Ein Mechanismus, der eine Art Enthemmung ermöglicht.
Based on the assumption that ordinary and average people will be risk-averse, it makes sense for the finance industry, which is optimized for outcome, to hire people who are more inclined toward risk. They achieve that with bonuses and with targeted hiring practices.
Eine bestimmte Personalauswahl.
I believe it's just a matter of time before the next finance crisis will hit.
First humans. And when they got there, did they say, oh, we would like to learn about the customs that you have used for hundreds of thousands of years? What did they say? You're Catholic now, or we kill you. All right, so they just said, we are the best, the rest. Stop doing that, and you're Catholic now, let's play bingo. In the back of our head, we know that the current Western approach to life requires that we directly and indirectly take advantage of other people's. War and stuff go together, and they always have. Our ability to consume wantonly requires the involuntary subjugation of large swatches of the rest of the world. You cannot be an American unless you can have a banana anytime you want it, or coffee anytime I want it. Well, for that to happen, I need people to grow bananas, and I need people to grow coffee, and they may like to have something else besides banana and coffee, but we're just going to send our military and install our businesses there instead. The military and the leaders of the Fortune 500 companies are literally and symbolically inextricably connected.
I wonder, is mankind perhaps not an error of evolution? Nature's bizarre experiment on a small blue planet. Are we really mentally incapable of looking ahead?
There's been any number of great civilizations, the Aztecs, the Incas, that have from time to time imploded on themselves. If you look back historically at societies that have collapsed, they often do so right after they appear to be at their most auspicious moment. If we think we can just keep increasing the number of humans on the planet and provide each of them with the lifestyle that we in the West currently enjoy, without turning the Earth into a humanly uninhabited, smoldering heap, I think we're deluding ourselves. Our frenzied desire for infinite amounts of stuff will have the paradoxical consequence of being the first form of life to be responsible for our own extinction. It's very ominous, I would argue.
Sent off to Otis Federal Prison for almost 8 years. And so here in person, I welcome the man himself, Mr. Insider, Gordon Gekko.
You're all pretty much fucked. You don't know it yet, but you're the ninja generation. No income, no job, no assets. You got a lot to look forward to.
Blood, buddy, is gonna be your blood.
Someone reminded me the other evening that I once said greed is good. Now it seems it's legal. But folks, it's greed that makes my bartender buy 3 houses he can't afford with no money down. And it's greed that makes your parents refinance their $200,000 house for $250,000. And then they take that extra $50,000, they go down to the mall. They buy a plasma TV, cell phones, computers, an SUV, and hey, why not a second home while we're at it? Because gee whiz, I mean, we all know the prices of houses in America always go up, right? And it's greed that makes the government in this country cut the interest rates to 1% after 9/11. So we could all go shopping again. They got all these fancy names for trillions of dollars of credits. CMOs, CDOs, SIVs, ABSs. I honestly think there's maybe only 75 people in the world who know what they are. But I'll tell you what they are. They're WMDs. Weapons of mass destruction. When I was away, that's what they are. It seemed like greed got greedier with a little bit of envy mixed in. Hedge funders were walking home with $100 million a year. So Mr. Banker, he looks around and he says, my life looks pretty boring. So he starts leveraging his interests up to 40, 50 to 1. With your money. Not his, yours. Because he could. You're supposed to be borrowing, not them. And the beauty of the deal, no one is responsible. Because everybody's drinking the same Kool-Aid. Last year, ladies and gentlemen, 40% of all American corporate profits came from financial services. Not production, not anything remotely to do with the needs of the American public. The truth is, we're all part of it now. Banks, consumers, we're moving money around in circles. We take a buck, we shoot it full of steroids, and we call it leverage. I call it steroid banking. Now, I've been considered a pretty smart guy when it comes to finance.
That's fantastic, man.
And maybe I was in prison too long, but sometimes it's the only place to stay sane and look out through those bars and say, hey, is everybody out there nuts? It's clear as a bell to those that pay attention. The mother of all evil is speculation. Leveraged debt. Bottom line, it's borrowing to the hilt. And I hate to tell you this, but it's a bankrupt business model. It won't work. It's systemic, malignant, and it's global. Like cancer. It's a disease, and we gotta fight back. How are we gonna do that? How are we gonna leverage that disease back in our favor? Well, I'll tell you. 3 words. Buy my book.
And some more words of wisdom.
Would you agree? In a brand new interview, billionaire philanthropist Bill Gates telling the FT this, quote, the picture of the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. The FT reports this, quote, Gates said Musk had canceled grants to a hospital in Gaza province, Mozambique, that prevents women transmitting HIV to their babies in the mistaken belief that the U.S. was supplying condoms to Hamas in Gaza in the Middle East. Quote, I'd love for him to go in and meet the children that have now been infected with HIV because he cut that money. Bill Gates announced plans to step up where Trump and Musk have pulled away, with plans to spend more than $200 billion on global health in the next 20 years. Gates also expanded on his comments in an interview with Stephen Colbert last night. Watch.
I been out in the field with the people who work for USAID and seen, the brilliant work they do and how important that is. Unfortunately, there was a weekend where it was decided they were criminals and they were put in the wood chipper. And so we lost a lot of capacity there. Now, we can get it back. Eventually, Congress is the one who will have the final word on this. And even I'm not even sure the administration understands, what's going on in the field, because we do have, for the first time in 25 years, we have more children dying. Instead of it going down, it's now going up. And unless we reverse pretty quickly, that'll be over 1 million additional deaths.
And you lay some of this at the feet of Doge and, of course, Elon Musk. And I hope I'm getting this even close here. You said the picture of the world's richest man being involved in the death of the world's poorest is not a pretty one.
That's right.
Well said. Well said.
In a brand new interview, billionaire philanthropist.
Okay. Dave, we can open up for discussion.
Okay. So when is your book coming out and how much is it going to cost?
Yes, I should have had it here. Buy my book, Indicting America.
Anybody wants to use the raise the hand function if they have any questions for Sal?
I'm going to jump to the head of the line here real quick while other people are thinking and ask.
You mean you're going to jump to the end of the line or to the front of the line?
So in thinking about all this greed and what have you, and this might be something that you really touch on more in future episodes of this class. It seems to me that greed is a function of insecurity and a feeling that no matter how much you have, you are not like the birds in the wild and will be able to sustain yourself even during the harshest of winters. And so it just seems to me that there's this psychological component to it, but then also that this component is then easily transferable to others around them, because you can see, gosh, I'm out here in the suburbs, and how many people have bought houses they really don't think that they really can't afford, so that they can be in the right school district, so that their kids can get the right start on life, so that they can sustain themselves through the harshest of winters. So I'm just kind of wondering about, and if I'm jumping the gun on that, that's okay too, but I'm just wondering about that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I think number one, the concept of there being insecurity, that the person wants to get more stuff that might somehow give them more security, and all that kind of flows from that, protecting their children, making sure they're prepared for the future and protected. I mean, I think all of that does play into it. But here is the thing: the insecurity factor is that if I've gathered excess and I've found ways to store it out in the desert, and last month our neighbors attacked us to try to get it, we fought them off and we won. Now what I have to do is create a protective edifice, because I don't feel secure. They may come for my stuff again. So I create.
Because they feel insecure.
Well, that's right. And so what I want to do is I want to create my army or navy or whatever it is, my muscle that is going to defend my stuff if they attack again. Now, as time goes on, there are more people like me who come about, and they're afraid someone's going to get their stuff. So they create a protective edifice. And I'm watching them. I'm watching everybody, right? So because I don't want anyone attacking me. So I have the biggest army. They're building up their army. You know what? I think I'm going to attack them before their army is as big as my army. And not only am I going to take out their army, but I'm going to take all their excess and add it to mine. So you now start to, and I know I'm oversimplifying it, but this is how empires emerged. And remember, the empires don't emerge until 6,000 years after we discovered agriculture. So what I'm saying is this process that I'm just spun through very quickly.
It builds on itself.
It builds on itself.
It requires communication from the leadership to those people that creates that same feeling of insecurity and at all costs, so that there's great buy-in. That's at least what it seems like to me.
Yeah, as I've said before, is that you have to look at these political forces as there's the people in leadership, and then there's the mass population. The people in the leadership may be driven by greed. The mass population may not have their same feelings of greed. So what motivates them? Well, the people at the top know the way to get them to follow along with what I want is by way of fear. And if I can make you fear the people from the next village, that fear will quickly transform into hate. And so now you're willing to go and fight and die for me. And so you can get into this frenzy, this rage. You can make the mass population get to that point where they'll go to war for you. Now, what also happens as a result of that is after a time of fighting wars for the emperor, the people fighting those wars say, wait a minute, what are we doing? You know, we had that last battle. I killed the guy I had to fight, and then I had to go and take away his weapons and stuff and look at his remains. And you know, he's just like you and me. He's no different. He's carrying a picture of his girlfriend. They didn't have pictures back then, but he's carrying, you know, a trinket
for
his
that
girlfriend.
matter, they didn't have psychological. They didn't understand the psychological resources that they were employing at that time either. I mean, these methods were used way before we've even identified that those are methods to use.
None of this is done on a it's kind of done on an instinctive level. But the people in power, they know how to manipulate. And what I'm saying is over these thousands of years, they've learned and refined the technique. So the reason I'm expounding on that is that if we take the American Revolution, Adams and Franklin used the fear of Black people and the fear of Native Americans to gin up the population and want to get independence from England. And they did it very well. So again, these are techniques that have gone on for a long, long time. And the reason I want to show it as a long, long time is that what we're living with today, turn on the news, you'll hear people talking about how unprecedented it all is. It ain't unprecedented. They haven't. I understand Trump and Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation did not come up with anything new. So it is, you know, but And when we get into discussing the individual strongmen, Hitler and Mussolini and the others, they're just the front men. When you start pulling back the layers, you start discovering who's behind all this stuff. And it's the people of wealth and power. And so, this is, again, this is not new. This is, and they, look, you see a Porsche driving down the street, right? It's like, wow, that's an expensive car. That's, really something. Well, Porsche was one of the people who funded Hitler. I mean, and they're still around. Hitler's gone. Everybody knows about Hitler. Very few people know about Porsche. Very few people know about Mercedes-Benz. Of all these others who financed him. We can get into the Italian financiers who backed Mussolini. You wouldn't know their names. We know Mussolini. But what I'm saying is, when you start pulling back the onion skin around these strongmen, you're going to find that what is at the root of it is greed, money, wealth, power.
Yes. And so what I was trying to get at is that I think that greed is probably driven by insecurities that just can't ever be squelched. That's
well, I wouldn't say can't never be squelched. I'm a much more optimistic person.
That's what we've noticed about you.
What's this laughter? What is this? What? Yeah,
Susan, save me.
What? I think there's still hope out there. Susan, hi.
Hi, how do you deal with the human condition of greed? And have there been periods in our history, that recorded history, of known something has happened where the greed has diminished? I mean, if we accept this as part of the human condition.
Yeah.
And that we're each responsible for our own drives around that. From a societal standpoint, where has there been a time in our history where human beings live together without that necessarily being the driving force for every single one of them? Are we talking about, my experience in going to Bosnia was that everybody there that were still there talked about how it was equal under Tito. Their kids went to school. They were happy with being able to sit at the cafe. There was food in every refrigerator. Most of them even had a getaway place to go in the summertime. It's like, this was my real introduction to socialism. And then, of course, communism came in and wrecked it for a lot of those people. But if you were to listen to that society in Eastern Europe, they would swear that living under socialism was one way of controlling greed.
Yeah, again, I look at stuff not as to what can it do within a limited span of time, limited span being, say, 100 years. But we created the United Nations. It's still an infant. And when you look at, there are enormous things that have been accomplished by the United Nations. Bill Gates was talking about how child deaths were going down. Now they're going up. Well, it's because the reason they went down was because of the UN. Poverty across the world was decreasing because of the UN. There were people, hold on to your seats now, who got vaccines because of the UN. So one of my great hopes is in the UN and other organizations like it, the International Criminal Court, and World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization. These institutions can be the things that implement the guardrails that bring excessive greed under control and become an outlet for people like Bill Gates, who's dipping into his, pocket to give it away, to say, I'm going to try and counterbalance the money that the US has jerked out of the world. So I think there is room for hope. And I want to reemphasize that I know the period before recorded history remains mysterious in many ways, but we do have a lot of archaeological evidence and other stuff that suggest the reason our species survived was because of our ability to cooperate and be reasonable. And if the post-war, I think the reason I did the class on Bosnia is because I think it is, and Herzegovina and Serbia and all of that, is because I think it's a great example of ancient times coming into modern times, because it was always, those mountainous areas were always a crossroads. You had all those rivers going down through there, that they became a crossroads for people. Mm-hmm. Humans who had developed languages that they couldn't understand each other, but they could get along. They intersected there and they got along. It was only when we start to get the concepts of food storage and food growing that we get excess, and then it becomes more contentious. The book by Tony Judt, who an NYU professor who's passed away, it's the title is The Post-War. It's one of the really great books about what happens after the war. And what happens is Europe says, we're done with this fighting stuff. Things are going to be more equal. We're not going to go and fight in Africa for you anymore. We're not going to do, we gave in to you at the end of World War I, where many of us wanted to follow Lenin. We didn't know what the hell communism meant. We didn't care. We just knew whatever we had, we don't want it anymore. And England and France really had to work very hard to keep their population from saying, the hell with it, we're going to become communists right now. And so they get to the end of the post-war and they say, everything's going to change. Okay, the communists, all of that doesn't really make sense to us, but socialism does. And what you get is the social democrats. But at the end of the war, of World War I, the communists should have been in the driver's seat. At the end of World War II, everybody, analysts expected they're all going to turn to communism. They didn't turn to communism. They turned to social democracy. And so you see these changes, and they're small in comparison with where we are. It's not where we want it to be, but it is moving in that direction slowly but inexorably. And I'm sorry, that was a long answer, but.
Well, I mean, I was wondering if war is a correcting factor of what happens post-war, and you certainly went into that. The other thing is, the people that couldn't rise out through that, though, are the warlords, because they also became familiar with looking at those who had been very successful during the Bosnian War. Mm-hmm. And they were the kings now living on the hill. And so we have a lot of this tech trillion billionaires who are digging their bunkers because they're convinced if we go to hell and have a war, they're going to survive with all their resources to take over.
They're delusional. I mean, it is. I understand they really think that the greater they build their protective edifice, that they will somehow be able to insulate themselves from viruses, and they can't.
Yeah.
And you know, but there are elements that are fighting for, advocating for a different arrangement where we live. You know, it's like I said to people is that Jesus was not, and I'm not a religious person, but Jesus was not against somebody getting wealthy.
Mhm.
As long as the rest of the population, their needs were met. If they're being fed and got health care and whatever, hell, go get as rich as you like. So I mean, I think there are forces that really do believe in that, but I'm not going to see it in my lifetime.
Mine either.
But I think if we look at that big broad picture, we can kind of look at from where we've come. Some good forces have emerged, particularly the UN, and what will happen in the future may be, you know, much more. Maybe we need to. What's this stuff they freeze you and put you away for 1,000 years, and then they unfreeze you and you come back? Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, that would be fun to know. Time travel ahead.
Thank
you.
One more anecdotal story. And that is in Florida during slavery, there was a slave master, Kingsley is his last name, who said slavery is wrong, but it's the system we got. It's what I've got to work with. So I have slaves and I have my plantation in Florida. But I don't have where if you pick 100 pounds today, you have to pick 110 pounds tomorrow. I don't do that. I give tasks to my people. When the task is done, they're off. They've done their job. And I give them a piece of land where they can grow some food, some pigs that they can raise so they can supplement their food, and they are off on Sundays. They have nothing, but you know, just whatever they feel like doing. And I will put a program together where they will save money to buy their freedom. I will get, everyone will have a path to buying their freedom. And he did it. He did it. And he was one of the most productive plantation operations in the country.
Wow.
The other slave masters hated him. And you know, it was, we don't want, and they did everything they could to undermine him and you know, and hurt him politically and all the rest. But he did it, and he showed an example. And I like that story because I really do believe that it's in the interest of the people who are powerful to want to see a more fruitful planet for everybody. It makes the world better for them and for everybody else. I believe that's possible.
That's a good note to end on.
Yeah. Yep. With that, can everybody unmute and give Sal warm applause for telling us about General Ben Kingsley and how the world's going to be a better place?
Thank you,
We all keep our fingers crossed, right?
Thank you.
Right.
And remember, we're going to record the class from last week again. We'll put it out on on YouTube so you can actually hear what those video clips said. Again, I really feel terrible that happened, but it happens. It happens.
And what's going to happen in week 3?
Week 3, we're going to meet Mussolini. And that'll be a real joy right there.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody, please be safe.
Thank you.
Take care, Sal.